In this lesson, we're going to be looking at strategies we can use to work out if one number goes into another number without remainder, without having to do the full division. Now, the main thing that's going to help you here is if you're good at your times tables. If you are, then this is going to be easier and it's going to be quicker. Now, the first one is 2. It goes into all even numbers. Remember, an even number is numbers that end in 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0, like 34, 18, and 32. So 2 would go into all of those without remainder. However, it would not go into 35, 17, or 3 because they do not end in 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. Number 3 is next, and for this one we can add up all the digits of the number and see if 3 goes into the result. So I've got some numbers here. So for 54, 5 plus 4 is 9, and 3 goes into 9. That means 3 would also go into 54. And the next one, 3 plus 5 plus 7 is 15. 3 goes into 15. That means it also goes into 357. For 4, 1, 1, and 2, that adds up to 8. Since 3 doesn't go into 8, it wouldn't go into 4112 either. And finally, we've got 18 on this one. When you add up these numbers, these digits, you get 18. That means 3 goes into 5283 as well. Now, 9 is very similar. And for 9, if you add up the digits, and this time 9's got to go into it. So exactly the same idea as for 3, this time 9's got to go into it. So we'll have the same numbers there, and the first one added up to 9. 9 goes into 9, so that's all good. However, 9 does not go into 15. That means that 9 does not go into 357. And this one added up to 8. 9 doesn't go into 8, so it doesn't go into that number either. And finally, 18 was what the last one added up to. Since 9 does go into 18, it also goes into 5283. Every single number that 9 goes into, 3 goes into as well, because 3 goes into 9. So anyway, that's how we can work out 3 and 9. Add up the digits and see if the number you're looking for goes into the result without remainder. Now the next one is 6, and there's no new test to learn here. It's if 2 and 3 go into the number, then so does 6. So when we look at each of these numbers, we just have to work out, does 2 and 3 both go into it? Now if you know your times tables well enough, you know 54, 6 goes into 54 9 times. Let's do little tests anyway. So the first one is it an even number? Yes it is, because it ends in a 4. Does 3 go into it? Yes it does, because the digits added to 9. That means that 6 would indeed go into 54. What about this one? No, it's not an even number. So straight away, don't worry about whether 3 goes into it. 2 didn't work, so that means 6 does not go into it either. With this one here, it is an even number because it ends in a 2, but when we added up the digits, we got 8. 3 doesn't go into 8, so that means 6 does not go into this number up here. And finally, with this last one here, that's again not an even number. That means automatically 6 is not going to go into it. So out of those 4 numbers, this is the only one that 6 would go into, because it's the only one that both 2 and 3 would go into. The next one is for 4. And what we do with 4 is we check the last 2 digits of the number. So in this 2320, we don't care about the 2 and the 3 at the front. Just check the last 2. If 4 goes into these digits here, this number, so 20, that means it goes into the whole number. And so, does 4 go into 20? Yes, it does. Goes in 5 times. That's where our times tables is useful. Let's give it a tick. The next one, what is that? 14,537. Does 4 go into that? Let's check the last 2 digits. Does 4 go into 37? No, it doesn't. 1, I know this because I know my times tables, and 2, because it's an odd number. 4 doesn't go into any odd number, and so that means it will not work. Now the next one, 7,276. Now, does 4 go into 76? That's well past my times tables, and so that makes it a little bit harder for me. But here's a trick we can use. If the number's too big, subtract 40 from it. See, I know 4 goes into 40 10 times, so I can take those 10 times off. I can take 40 off and see if 4 goes into the rest of it. So if I take 40 away from 76, it's 36. Does 4 go into 36? It does, doesn't it? So that means that, yes, it goes in 36 9 times. That means it goes into this full number here. We're going to try the same trick with this last one here. So we're looking at 94. Let's take 40 off. Oh, that's 54. That's still too high. That's more than my times table still. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take another 40 off. And so I can do it twice if I want to. And so I get it down to 14. Does 4 go into 14? No. Let's put a cross. It does not go into 2,294 either. So that's the rule for 4. Just look at the last two digits. The rest don't matter. Does 4 go into the last two digits? All right, we're going to take a look at 8 now, and it is one of the trickiest ones because this time you've got to see, does 8 go into the last three digits? So we use these numbers and I've underlined the last three digits each time. Now the reason is because, well, that's well past our times tables, isn't it? 294, for example. My times tables in 8s only goes up to 96, so I'm going to have to work out a strategy. One thing I could do, of course, is I could just do the division normally. So does 8 go into, for example, if I was doing this one, does 8 go into 537? So 8 doesn't go into 5, does it go into 53, goes in there 6 times with 5 remainder, and then 8 goes into 57, 7 times with 1 remainder. That means 8 does not go into 537, so I know it doesn't go into 14,537. But we want something a little bit quicker than this because we're trying to avoid having to do that sort of division here. Do it a bit quicker. And so here's the thing. In the last three digits, look at the first digit. So this one here is odd, this one's odd, this one's even, and this one's even. Okay, so if it's even, does 8 go into the last two digits? So does 8 go into 76? Is that on our times tables? It's not. 8 goes into 72 and into 80. What about this one here? Does 8 go into 94? No, it doesn't. Like I said, it goes up to 96, and the one under that's 88. And so straight away, I can say that 8 does not go into either of those two numbers because I was able just to look at the last two digits when this one's even. So it's a little bit to remember there, but this is one strategy we can use. Now, if the first digit there was odd, then all I've got to do is add 4 to these last two digits. So that means this 20 here becomes 24. Does 8 go into 24? And it does, doesn't it? It goes in 3 times. That means it goes into this full number here. What about this one? When I add 4, does 8 go into 41? No, that means it does not go into this full number here. And by the way, 8 doesn't go into any odd number. So don't even bother testing if it's odd. Just say straight away, 8 will not go into that number. So you can see this test is definitely more complicated. It's not too bad once you get the hang of it, but it is the hardest one that you'll have to do. Now the easiest two, 5. If the number ends in 5 or 0, 5 goes into the number. And 10, if it ends in 0, then 10 goes into the number. They're the easiest two that we got. Just look at the very last digit and you'll be able to tell if the number goes into it. And we should point out at this point in time, there's no easy enough divisibility test for 7. There are some very complicated ones, even more complicated than the 8. And so we're not going to worry about going through it for 7. If you were asked, does 7 go into a number, you just have to divide it normally and see if you get a remainder. Okay, a couple of quick examples to show the thinking. So does 6 go into 273,914? Fortunately, all we have to do is we see, is it even? Yes, it is. So 2 goes into it. Now, add up the digits. What do they add up to? 2 plus 7 is 9, plus 3 is 12, plus 12 is 21, plus 1 is 22, plus 4 is 26. They add up to 26. 3 does not go into 26, so 3 doesn't go into this number here. Okay, and since 3 didn't work, that means 6 won't work either. And so that's that first one. Notice all this is in green. You can just do all that in your head. The idea is to get this process going pretty quickly in our brains. We don't want to have to worry about spending a lot of time writing stuff down here. Alright, let's give it a try with 8 now. And so does 8 go into this number here without remainder? So we're just focusing on the last three digits there. And so 712. The first digit is an odd, which means that when we look at the last two, we add 4. And so that's 16. Does 8 go into 16? Yes. That means 8 goes into that number here. Okay, so it's more complicated to remember, but it's not that complicated to use as long as you can remember it. Okay, give it a go with some practice questions here. Remember to pause the video. And there we go. With the answers there, notice there's no working. Like I said, do a lot of this stuff on your head, hopefully, and you'll be able to get pretty quick at it. So with the first one, does 9 go into it? I added up the digits. I went 5 plus 3 is 8, plus 8 is 16, 16 plus 9 is 25. Does 9 go into 25? No, it doesn't. That means it doesn't go into the number. I just wrote down no. In the second one, I ignored most of the number except the 92. And I have to just work out, does 4 go into 92? Now 92 is too big for me, so I subtracted 40. And 92 take away 40 is 52. I went, gee, that's still too big. I subtracted another 40. And that got me down to 12. Does 4 go into 12? Yes, it does. That means it goes into the number. And for the final one, this was the easiest one. I just looked at this digit here. If it's a 5 or a 0, 5 goes into it. Since it's not, that means no, 5 does not go into the number. So here's a couple more practice questions if you need to give them another go. Remember to pause the video. And there we go. This time they all worked. And that brings us to the end of the lesson.